Blood-red dunes swallowed his tracks, but Arson didn't care. He was born to burn. A scarred mercenary hauling a secret crate through the scorch. He laughed at death, twin suns scorching his back. Triple pay promised salvation, but the desert whispered lies, its curves hiding claws sharper than his past. Kalia's locket hung heavy, her ghost screaming run, yet a scent, orchids, fire, pulled him deeper, like a lover he couldn't refuse. Something waited in that crate, something the Veil of Ash called a spark to end worlds. Arson's grin was a blade. Let it try. Out here, where mirages danced and dunes seduced, he'd face hell itself, scarred, smart-assed, and ready for chaos. But when the locks hissed open, he'd find more than cargo, a forbidden flame, purple-skinned and blue-eyed, ready to ignite his soul or destroy it. If Arson's grit and Syra's fire got your blood pumping, don't let the Scorch's secrets fade. Hit that subscribe button and join the caravan. More tales of danger, desire, and badass defiance are coming to this channel. Click now, or you'll be stuck wandering the dunes without a story to light your way. Let's burn bright together. Arson trudged through the scorch, boots sinking into crimson dunes that shifted like a conman's promises. Twin suns blazed overhead, one a bloated red giant, the other a pissy white dwarf, both hell-bent on turning him into jerky. His containment unit, a hulking crate on anti-grav skids, groaned behind him, tethered by a cable that chafed his shoulder raw. Triple pay, the contract had promised. Triple pay for hauling mystery cargo across a desert that'd kill you for looking at it funny. He snorted, wiping sweat from his brow. Yeah, triple pay, he muttered, voice rough as gravel. Probably for my funeral. Real generous. The scorch wasn't just sand. It was a vixen, all curves and lies, its dunes rolling like hips under silk, tempting you to drop your guard before it slit your throat. Crimson grains sparkled, catching sunlight in a way that screamed, "Look at me," only to shift and swallow your tracks. Obsidian pillars jutted from the earth, their surfaces gleaming like polished secrets, eroded into shapes that made Arson's mind wander to places it hadn't in years. Lizards skittered between clumps of spine grass, scales blending with the sand, gone before you could blink. Above, scavengers wheeled, leathery wings slicing the sky, betting on his next mistake. The air hummed, thick with heat and something else, a pulse that felt alive, like the desert was watching, waiting to pounce. Arson adjusted his pack, muscles flexing under a shirt plastered to his chest. Sweat traced paths down his scarred frame. Each mark a story of bad calls and worse fights. A long gash ran from temple to jaw, a memento from a job gone south. But the real scars were deeper, etched where no blade could reach. His fingers brushed a locket dangling against his sternum. Kalia's name carved in faded script, a ghost that clung tighter than the heat. She died on a run he couldn't finish, her scream looping in his head when the world got too quiet. He smirked, shaking it off. Focus, genius, he told himself. No ghost today. Just sand, sweat, and whatever's in this damn box. He'd taken the gig from the Veil of Ash, a shadowy outfit with more secrets than sense. Deliver the cargo, they'd said, voice crackling through a hollow feed, and don't ask questions. Fine by him. Questions get you killed faster than curiosity. They called it a spark to end worlds, which Arson chalked up to melodramatic crap. Worlds, my ass, he chuckled, kicking a pebble that vanished into the dunes. But it's some rich bastard's art collection. Alien vases or glow-in-the-dark rugs. Still, the payout was real, enough to buy a ticket off this rock, or at least a cold beer and a week without someone shooting at him. The Scorch didn't care about his plans. It was a trickster, conjuring mirages to mess with your head, oases shimmering just out of reach, only to dissolve when you got close, laughing at your thirst. He'd seen one earlier, a lake so clear he could almost taste it, until it flickered out like a busted hollow. Nice try, sweetheart, he said to the desert, grinning. Gonna take more than fake water to break me. I've survived worse, like that dive bar on Rigel with the two-headed bartender. The memory made him laugh, a dry rasp that echoed off a nearby pillar. Humor was his shield, keeping the dark at bay, even if it didn't fool the ghosts. His wrist transponder beeped, cutting through his thoughts. 2 days in, halfway to the drop point. He glanced at the unit, its matte surface giving nothing away. "What's in you, huh?" he asked, tapping it with a gloved finger. "Gold? Guns?" A really pissed-off cat. No answer, just the hum of its grav skids, steady as a heartbeat. He shrugged, but a prickle ran down his spine. Not fear. Arson didn't do fear, but something heavier, like the weight of choice he hadn't made yet. Kalia's voice whispered in his head, "Walk away," and he shoved it down hard. "No walking," he growled. "Not till I get paid." The air shifted, carrying a scent that stopped him cold. Scorched orchids, sharp and alive, nothing like the scorch's usual stink of dust and death. It curled into his lungs, sweet enough to make his pulse jump, dangerous enough to raise his hackles. He scanned the dunes, hand drifting to the blaster at his hip. "Okay, that's new," he said, voice low. "Either I'm hallucinating or something's out there with better perfume than me." The scent lingered, tugging at him, promising trouble wrapped in silk. He smirked, but his grip tightened. If it's a trap, it's a fancy one. Gotta respect the effort. He pressed on, the unit dragging like his past. The pillars grew denser, their glow pulsing faintly, as if whispering secrets he wasn't meant to hear. The Scorch was playing games, and Arson was its favorite pawn. "Triple pay," he repeated, like a mantra, "worth every blister, right?" His laugh was hollow, Kalia's locket swinging with each step, a reminder of promises broken. He'd failed her, too slow, too weak, and the guilt was a blade, sharper than any scar. But out here in the Vixen's embrace, he could outrun it, or at least pretend. "Keep moving, funny guy," he muttered. "Laugh it off. Always works." A gust swirled sand around him, stinging his face, and he squinted, catching a flicker in the distance. Not a mirage, but something solid, a shadow that didn't belong. His blaster was out before he thought twice, humor fading to instinct. "All right, Scorch," he said, voice steady. "You want to dance? I'm game. Just don't expect me to lead." Nothing moved, but the orchid scent grew stronger, coiling tighter, like a lover's breath on his neck. He froze, heart thumping, not from the shadow, but from a feeling, stupid, reckless, that whatever was coming would burn him alive, and he'd welcome it. The transponder beeped again, pulling him back. 2 days in, and the unit's locks were up next. He knelt beside it, dust clinging to his knees, and ran a hand over the controls. "Moment of truth," he said, smirking to hide the tremor in his gut. "Hope you're worth it, mystery box. I'm not dying for cheap cargo." His fingers hovered, Kalia's ghost screaming run, but Arson wasn't built for running. "Not anymore." "Screw it," he said, flipping the lock. "Let's see what kind of trouble you are." The unit hissed, seams glowing faint blue, and Arson stood, blaster ready, grin sharp as a blade. "Come on, sweetheart," he told the desert. "Hit me with your best shot. I've got jokes for days and a grave to avoid." The Scorch didn't answer, but the scent, orchids, fire, wrapped him tighter, a promise of chaos he couldn't outrun. Kalia's locket burned against his chest, and for the first time in years, Arson felt alive, like a man stepping into a fire he was born to face. The containment unit hissed, seemed splitting with a faint blue glow, like a star cracking open. Arson stepped back, blaster loose in his grip, a grin plastered on to hide the twitch in his gut. "All right, mystery box," he said, voice dry as the Scorch around him. "Let's see if you're gold, garbage, or just a really bad idea." The desert held its breath, crimson dunes frozen under twin suns, their light glinting off obsidian pillars that stood like sentinels to his folly. The orchid scent, sharp, alive, thickened, wrapping his senses, and he muttered, "If this is a trap, it's got style. Gotta give it that." The lid slid open, and Arson's smirk died. She was no bomb, no crate of alien junk. Syra lay inside, curled like a secret the Scorch had whispered into being. Her skin shimmered purple, a dusk-made flesh, glowing soft as if twilight had kissed her into existence. White hair spilled around her, a cascade of starlight, each strand catching the sun's fire like spun crystal. Her eyes, blue as Rigel's ice caves, sharp enough to cut, locked onto his, twinkling with mischief and something deeper, a hunger that made his breath snag. Shackles bound her wrists and ankles, etched with glyphs that pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat caged. She didn't flinch, didn't beg, just watched him, her silence louder than the desert's howl. "Well, Dem," Arson said, holstering his blaster, humor his only shield. "You're not the explosion I expected, but you're definitely explosive." He leaned closer, catching her scent, sandalwood and embers, a perfume that sank into his bones, stirring heat he hadn't felt since Kalia. Her body was a sculptor's dream, slender waist flowing into hips that promised trouble, legs long and taut, curved like the dunes outside. The shackles couldn't hide her strength, coiled like a sandcat ready to pounce. He cleared his throat, stepping back. "Name's Arson. You got one, or do I call you Glowstick?" Her lips curved, a smile that could derail a starship. "Syra," she said, voice of velvet hum, low and melodic, like a song from a world he'd never know. "And you?" Arson, smell of regret. "Why carry it?" Her blue eyes flicked to the locket at his chest, and he tensed, fingers brushing it, Kalia's name a blade in his ribs. He forced a chuckle. "Regret? Nah, that's just my cologne. Au débat décision. You like?" She tilted her head, hair shimmering, and laughed. A sound like chimes in a storm, bright yet edged. "I like," she said, "but it hides you. I see clearer." Her words hit harder than they should, peeling at the armor he'd built since Kalia's scream went silent. He turned away, busying himself with the unit's controls. "Yeah, well, seeing's overrated. Let's move, Glowstick. Got a deadline, and you're not exactly carry-on luggage." Syra rose, shackles clinking, her grace unnatural, like water flowing uphill. She stepped onto the sand, 3 paces ahead as he ordered, but her walk was no prisoner's shuffle. It was a dance, hips swaying with a rhythm that mocked the Scorch's chaos. The dunes seemed to lean toward her, their patterns curling into spirals, as if the desert itself was smitten. Alien flora peeked from crevices, blooms like shattered glass, petals pulsing violet, their tips weeping amber sap that hissed on contact. Arson blinked, muttering, "This place is tripping balls." "Or maybe that's you, Syra." She glanced back, blue eyes twinkling. "Your heart's loud, human, scared or smitten." Her tease was a dart, playful but precise, and he grinned despite himself. "Scared? Nah, just allergic to glowing trouble. Should have packed my meds." Her laugh rang again, and damn if it didn't lighten the weight in his chest, just for a second. Kalia's ghost stirred. Her smile had done that, too, but Syra's was different, sharper, like a blade you wanted to bleed for. They trekked for hours, the scorch relentless. The suns hammered down, turning his shirt into a second skin, sweat tracing scars that mapped a life of near misses. Syra moved unbothered, her purple skin drinking the light, white hair swaying like a comet's tail. He caught himself staring, then quipped, "You ever turn that glow off? Or am I stuck squinting forever?" She smirked, tossing her hair. "Glow is truth, Arson. You'd miss it." He snorted. "Truth? Last time I chased that, I got a bar tab and a black eye." At camp, under a jagged outcrop that clawed the sky, Arson rigged a thermal shelter, its hum a faint comfort against the desert snarl. Syra knelt by the fire, her posture a mix of defiance and allure, the curve of her throat bared like a dare. He tossed her a ration pack, saying, "Eat up, Glowstick. Don't need you fainting on my watch." She caught it, blue eyes glinting. "Faint? My kin danced on Calyx 7's ash plains, where air burns lungs. I am no fragile thing." Her voice carried a shadow, a crack in her playfulness, and Arson paused, ration halfway to his mouth. "Your kin?" he asked, curiosity slipping past his guard. "Where are they now?" Her gaze dropped, fingers tracing a shackle's glyph. "Dust," she said softly. "I'm the last Kaisari, hunted for what I carry." She tapped her chest, not her heart but something deeper, a secret stitched into her being. Arson's locket burned against his skin. Kalia, gone too, her blood on his hands for being too slow. He swallowed, humor faltering. Last, huh? That's a shitty club to join. I know. Her blue eyes met his, not pitying but understanding, a mirror to his own ghosts. You laughed to hide it, she said, voice a whisper now, cutting through the fire's crackle. Pain. Loss. Her. She nodded at the locket, and Arson's jaw tightened, a reflex to shove her out. But her gaze held him, soft yet unyielding, like the scorch itself. He leaned back, forcing a grin. Your mind reader now? Add that to the glowing, and you're a walking carnival. Syra didn't laugh, just watched, her silence louder than words. The fire painted her purple skin in gold, white hair catching sparks like a halo. No reader, she murmured. I see you, Arson. Scars sing louder than jests. Her voice wove into him, a melody that tugged at Kalia's memory. Her laugh, her touch, gone forever. He looked away, throat tight. Keep singing, Syra, he said softer than he meant. Makes me forget I'm a screw-up for a minute. She hummed then, an alien tune, haunting and raw, like winds over Rigel's bone dunes. It wasn't Kalia's song, but it stirred the same ache, a longing for something he'd buried. The scorch seemed to listen, its howl fading, dunes settling as if charmed. Syra's shackles gleamed, a reminder she was no free soul. She was a fugitive, like she'd hinted, carrying a spark the Veil wanted bad enough to kill for. Arson's contract said deliver her, but her hum said trust me, and damn if he wasn't leaning toward the latter. He checked her restraints later, her breath grazing his cheek, warm and deliberate. Sandalwood and embers flooded his senses, her nearness a jolt he fought to ignore. You bind me, she whispered, blue eyes dancing, but what binds you? Duty or her? The locket felt like lead, Kalia's name a chain he'd never cut. He pulled back, grinning to dodge the truth. Duty, glow stick. Gotta afford my fancy dirt collection somehow. Her laugh was a spark, lighting something in him he thought was ash. Dirt? She teased, leaning closer, hair brushing his arm. I'd wager you collect fire. Human. Careful, it burns. Her words were playful, but her eyes held a shadow. Her kin's dust, her hunted life. Arson saw it, felt it, their losses twining like the dune's spirals. He stood, breaking her gaze, humorous fallback. Fire, huh? Good thing I'm flame retardant. Now sleep, Syra. Big day of not dying tomorrow. She curled by the fire, purple skin glowing faint, white hair a soft tide. Arson sat watch, locket heavy, Syra's hum lingering in his head. The scorch whispered beyond, orchids fading to embers, and he muttered, triple pay my ass. This is going to cost me everything. For the first time since Kalia, he didn't mind the price. The scorch turned feral as dusk bled across the dunes, twin suns sinking into a haze that churned like bad whiskey. A howler storm screamed in, sand whipping Arson's face like 1,000 tiny knives. He yanked the containment unit's tether, cursing as it bucked against the wind. Perfect, he growled, voice barely cutting through the roar. Just what I needed, a sandblaster facial and a side of death. Syra strode ahead, her purple skin catching the storm's glow, white hair lashing like a flag in a gale. She didn't falter, her blue eyes scanning the chaos with a grin that said she was born for this. Keep up, funny man, she called, her velvet hum slicing the wind's howl. Or does your heart tire already? Arson smirked, tugging his scarf tighter. Tire? Glow stick, I'm just pacing myself so you don't feel bad. Her laugh rang out, a chime against the storm's snarl, and damn if it didn't spark something in him. Kalia used to laugh like that, bold in the face of hell. He shoved the memory down, focusing on Syra's silhouette, a beacon in the red haze. The locket at his chest burned, guilt whispering he didn't deserve this new fire, but he kept moving, one boot after another. The dunes writhed, sculpted into claws by the wind, their peaks crumbling like promises. Bone-like rocks jutted from the sand, polished smooth, humming with a low drone that rattled Arson's teeth. Vera's glass flats had storms like this, gusts that'd strip flesh if you stood still. But the scorch added a personal touch, flinging glowing motes that danced across Syra's skin, turning her into a living constellation. Alien vines clung to crevices, their thorns pulsing green, spitting static when the wind grazed them. Arson muttered, "This place is pissed. Or maybe it's just jealous of your glow." Syra glanced back, blue eyes twinkling. "Jealous? The scorch courts me, human. You should try it." Her tease was a hook, and he grinned despite the sting in his face. "Court? I'd rather wrestle Tormax, red hells, than charm a desert. No offense, glowstick." Her laugh was a spark, but her gaze flicked skyward, calculating. 3 days, she said, voice firm. "This storm hungers long." He raised a brow, sand crunching underfoot. 3 days? You a weather girl now? She smirked, hair whipping. "Kaisari red winds. We danced in storms while your kind hid." A shadow crossed her face. Her kin, dust now, hunted to nothing. Arson caught it, his own ghost stirring. "Yeah, well," he said, softer, hiding's overrated. "Let's find cover before we're both dust." A cave yawned ahead, its mouth framed by rocks like shattered teeth, glowing faintly with mineral veins. Arson tethered the unit outside, its hum drowned by the storm's wail. Inside, the air was cool, thick with the tang of iron and damp stone. Syra slipped in first, her purple skin shimmering, motes clinging to her like lovers. She spun, hair flaring, and plopped onto a ledge, legs crossed, grinning. "Cozy," she purred. "Your kind likes caves, yes?" "Like burrowing rats." Arson snorted, rigging a heat lamp, its buzz cutting the dark. "Rats? Glowstick, I'm a high-class mole." "Big difference." He tossed her a water pouch, but their thighs brushed as he sat, her heat a jolt through his damp shirt. Sandalwood and clove hit him, her scent sharper in the tight space, clouding his head like a shot of Rigel's fire gin. His muscles tensed, scars tight under sweat, and he quipped to dodge the pull. "Personal space, Syra. Ever heard of it?" Her blue eyes danced, leaning closer. "Space. Your eyes don't want it." She tapped his chest, near the locket, and he froze, Kaliya's name a pulse under her touch. "They want fire," she whispered, voice a growl, low and daring. Arson's grin slipped, her nearness unraveling him. "Fire's dangerous," he said, voice rough. "Burns fools like me." Her gaze softened, seeing too much, his guilt, his loss. And for a second he hated how exposed she made him feel. The cave's walls glittered, veins pulsing like a heartbeat, echoing the storm's rage outside. Arson busied himself with rations, but Syra's presence was a magnet. Her purple skin catching lamplight, white hair spilling like a tide. A cut martyr arm, sand crusted in it, and he grabbed a medkit, muttering, "Don't bleed out, glow stick. I'm not hauling a corpse." He knelt, cleaning the wound, his fingers brushing her skin, electric, warm, her pulse a drum under his touch. She hissed, then smirked. "Careful, funny man. You'll break me." His laugh was tight, Kaliya's ghost screaming, "Too fragile, too late." "Break you," he said, bandaging her. "You're tougher than me, Syra. Don't make me bury another." The words slipped out, raw, and her blue eyes locked on his. "No jest now." "Bury," she murmured. "I'd rather burn with you, Arson." Her voice was a vow, her own pain leaking through. Last Kaisari, running from hunters who'd slaughter her for the spark she carried, a secret the veil craved. He pulled back, heart hammering, her clove scent lingering like a drug. "Burning's my specialty," he quipped, dodging again. "But let's not test it tonight." She hummed, that alien tune from camp, haunting as Tormax's ghost winds, and it wove into him, easing the locket's weight for a moment. He sat watch, the storm's howl a dull roar, muttering, "Triple pay, my ass. She's gonna cost my soul." Dawn broke, the storm dying to a whimper. Arson stepped out, sand dusting his boots, Syra at his side, her glow undimmed. The cave's mouth framed a scorch reborn, dunes smoothed into waves, rocks gleaming like wet bone, vines now curled tight, their thorns dim. He checked the unit, intact, and said, "All right, glowstick, let's." A war cry cut him off, raw and jagged, as raiders burst from the dunes, 6 clad in scrap armor, blades glinting like bad intent. Ah, hell! Arson groaned, blaster up. Morning, people. Worst kind. He fired, a bolt-clipping one, but Syra was already moving, shackles snapping like brittle eyes. She was a whirlwind, purple skin blazing, white hair flaring like a comet's tail. Her fists struck like thunder, bones cracking, bodies folding under her grace. Lethal, fluid, a dance that made Arson's blood roar. One raider lunged at him, blade flashing, and he ducked, quipping, "Buddy, I'm not your type." His shot took the man's knee, but Syra finished it, her kick snapping his neck clean. The last raider fell, sand drinking his blood, and silence crashed in. Syra stood, chest heaving, purple skin aglow, blue eyes fierce as a storm's heart. Her white hair settled, framing a face that was equal parts goddess and predator. Arson lowered his blaster, grinning. "Show off. Save some for me next time." She laughed, a spark in the carnage, but knelt, offering her wrists, shackles dangling. "Bind me," she said, voice thick, daring. "Or don't. Choose, funny man." He stared, her scent, clove and wildfire now. Overwhelming, her posture a challenge. Shoulders squared, neck arched like she'd bear more than wrists if he asked. The locket burned, Kalia's voice fading under Syra's fire. "Freedom," he said, tossing the shackles. "I'm not that dumb." Her smile was a sunrise, but her eyes held shadows. Hunters still chased her, the veil's claws closing. He saw it, felt it, their ghosts twining tighter. She rose, a cut on her side oozing, and Arson grabbed the medkit again, stepping close. "Hold still, glow stick," he said, voice low. "You're a mess." His fingers grazed her skin, heat sparking, her breath a soft growl against his ear. The cave loomed behind, its veins dim now, but Syra's glow was enough, her purple skin a canvas, white hair brushing his arm. "You're steady," she murmured, blue eyes locked on his. "Steady men survive. Why risk me?" He tied the bandage, humor faltering. "Risk? Syra, you're the only thing keeping me from losing it out here." Her gaze softened, seeing his scars, Kalia's, his own, and her hand hovered near the locket, not touching. "Then keep me," she whispered. "Not for duty, but for fire." Arson's grin returned, shaky. "Fire, huh? You're gonna burn me to ash, glow stick." Her laugh was music, raw and alive, as the scorch stretched before them, dunes whispering of wars to come. Arson shouldered the unit's tether, muttering, "Triple pay's a lie, but you're worth it." Syra walked beside him, purple skin catching dawn's light, white hair swaying, blue eyes promising chaos he'd chase to hell and back. The ember rift yawned like a wound in the scorch, its scarlet sands pulsing under twin suns that glared without mercy. Arson hauled the containment unit's tether, boots grinding against crystal spires that jutted like broken fangs, their tips humming with a heat that prickled his skin. Syra strode beside him, purple skin shimmering, white hair catching the light like a signal fire. Her blue eyes scanned the rift, twinkling with mischief, but a tightness lingered, a hunted thing's instinct, one Arson knew too well. He wiped sweat from his brow, grinning to dodge the tension. "Gotta say, glow stick, this place looks like hell," threw a tantrum. "You sure we're not lost?" Syra's laugh was a spark, sharp and bright. "Lost? Funny man, I navigate by stars, not doubts." She spun, hair flaring, and poked his chest, her touch a jolt through his damp shirt. "Your heart's racing. The rift, or me?" Her tease was a blade, playful yet cutting, and Arson snorted, adjusting his pack. "Rift, Syra. You're just the side dish." Her blue eyes danced, calling his bluff, and damn if he didn't want to lean in her fire. The rift wasn't just sand. It was alive, a beast with a pulse, its dunes carved into waves that seemed to breathe. Spires glowed faintly, their hum a low growl, like the scorch was sizing them up. Strange ferns sprouted in clusters, their fronds black and slick, dripping a sap that tasted of copper when the wind flicked it to Arson's lips. He spat, muttering, "Great. Alien salad with a side of rust. My favorite." Syra smirked, plucking a frond and twirling it. Taste life, human. It bites back. Her grin was trouble, and he felt it in his gut. Kalia's ghost stirred, her laugh a faint echo, but Syra's was louder, pulling him forward. They pressed deeper, the unit's grav skids whining. Arson's scars itched under his shirt, the locket at his chest heavy with Kalia's name. He'd failed her, too slow, too weak, and the guilt was a stone, dragging with every step. Syra caught his glance, her blue eyes softening, seeing too much. "You carry her," she said, voice a hum. "No jest now. Why let her chain you?" Arson's jaw tightened, humor his shield. "Chains? Nah, glow stick, this is just my workout plan. Keeps me lean." She didn't laugh, just watched, her purple skin catching a spire's glow, hair a white tide framing her face. "Lean," she murmured, but heavy. Her words hit like a gut punch, and he looked away, focusing on the dunes. The veil of ash wanted Syra, her spark, whatever it was, and he was their dog, leashed by triple pay. But her voice, her fight, made that leash feel like a noose. "Keep moving," he said, rougher than he meant. "Gotta earn my dirt collection." The rift's hum spiked, a warning in Arson's bones, and Syra froze, blue eyes narrowing. "Hunters," she hissed, dropping the frond. Before he could quip, the air split. Mechanical shrieks, not human, as Kaisari hunters erupted from the dunes. 8 of them, tall and sleek, their armor gleaming like oil, claws snapping with a whine that drowned the spire's song. Syra's kin, or what was left, soulless shells, wired for slaughter, the veil's puppets chasing her spark. "Ah, crap." Arson groaned, blast her out. "Family reunion? You didn't RSVP me, glow stick." He fired, bolts sizzling, but the hunters moved like liquid, dodging with a hum that buzzed his skull. Syra was already gone, shackles snapping free, her purple skin blazing like a comet's heart. She was no whirlwind now. She was a maelstrom, white hair a blazing trail, blue eyes fierce as suns. Her fists cracked armor, her kicks shattered joints, each move a poem of fury and grace, like she'd danced this death 1,000 times. Arson aimed for weak points, knee servos, chest vents, his shots sparking off their shells. "Come on, rust buckets," he yelled, dodging a claw that grazed his arm, blood welling. "I'm too pretty for scrap." Syra spun past, her laugh a wild thing, and called, "Show off. Save some for me." He grinned, heart pounding, her fire infectious. A hunter lunged, and he rolled, blasting its leg, but Syra finished it, her elbow crushing its core with a screech that echoed off the spires. One caught her, claws slicing her side, and Arson's world narrowed. "Syra!" he roared, lunging, his blaster useless now. He tackled her free, her weight ablaze against his chest, her blood hot on his hands. Her purple skin burned, her breath a ragged song, sweet as nectar, sharp as steel. "Don't you dare let go," he growled, dragging her behind a spire. Her blue eyes flickered, a comet's tail promising more than survival, and she surged back, tearing through the hunter with a roar that shook the rift, like she fought for him, not just her spark. The last hunter fell, circuits sparking, and silence slammed down, heavy as guilt. Syra stood among the wreckage, purple skin radiant, white hair tangled, blue eyes blazing with something raw, grief, rage, freedom. Sweat traced her throat, glistening like molten silver, her chest heaving, each breath a defiance of death. Arson lowered his blaster, blood dripping from his arm, and quipped, "Hell of a dance, glow stick. You always this popular." Her laugh was weak, but real, a spark in the ruin. "Only with fools like you," she said, voice thick. She swayed, blood oozing from her side, and Arson caught her, his hands steady despite the locket's weight. Her heat seared him, her scent, amber and wildfire, thick enough to taste, flooding his senses. He tore a strip from his shirt, pressing it to her wound, his fingers brushing her purple skin, electric and alive. "Hold still," he muttered, "or I'll staple you together." Her breath hitched, a soft growl against his ear, and she murmured, "You stayed, funny man." "What?" He met her blue eyes, unflinching, Kalia's ghost fading under a fire. "Some fires don't fade, Syra," he said, voice low raw. "You're one." Her lips curved, a smile that could unravel stars, and she leaned closer, her heat wrapping him, her white hair grazing his cheek, a touch unmade, yet burning, like a vow they couldn't speak. His bandage tightened, her pulse strong under his palm, and he quipped to dodge the ache, "Don't get mushy, glow stick. I'm allergic to feelings." She laughed, softer now, her purple skin glowing faint, blue eyes tracing his face, scars, locket, all of it. "Allergic?" she purred, fingers hovering near his chest, not quite touching. "Your heart begs fire, Arson. I see it." Her words were playful, but her gaze held truth. She was the last Kaisari. Her kin turned to dust or drones, hunted for a spark she'd die to keep. He saw her pain, felt it, their losses a knot pulling tighter. The rift pulsed around them, spires dimming, ferns curling inward like fists. Arson helped her stand, his arm around her waist, her heat a brand he craved. "You're a mess," he said, grinning, "but a gorgeous one. Let's move before more cousins show up." Syra smirked, leaning into him, her white hair brushing his shoulder. "Cousins?" "No, human. Only me." Her voice cracked, last of her kind, a fugitive with nowhere to run. And Arson's locket burned, Kalia's ghost nodding. "She's yours now." He shouldered the unit's tether, muttering, "Triple pay's a joke, but you're no punchline, Syra." She walked close, purple skin catching dusk's glow, blue eyes fierce with something new. Trust, maybe, or fire. The scorch stretched ahead, spires humming a warning, but Arson didn't care. Her amber scent lingered on his tongue, her touch a spark in his veins, and for the first time since Kalia, he felt the rift wasn't just a grave, it was a heart beating for them both. The scorch softened as night fell, its crimson dunes giving way to an oasis that shimmered like a fever dream. Arson led the way, the containment unit's hum a faint echo behind him, its tether loose for once. Syra walked close, her purple skin catching the glow of bioluminescent algae that swirled in the water, painting her like a nebula born to breathe. Her white hair flowed like moonlight, swaying with each step, and her blue eyes twinkled with mischief, though a shadow lingered, her kin's dust, her hunted life. He glanced at her, grinning to dodge the ache in his chest. "Gotta hand it to you, glow stick," he said, voice rough. "You pick a hell of a spot to crash. This place looks like it's flirting with us." Syra's laugh was a chime, bright as the stars above. "Flirting? Funny man, it begs to worship me." She spun, hair flaring, and flicked water at him, her fingers grazing his arm, a spark that jolted his scars. "And you, Arson? Worship or flee?" Her tease was a dare, her blue eyes dancing, and he snorted, kicking sand. "Flee? Nah, I'm too stubborn. But worship's a stretch, unless you're buying the drinks." Her grin widened, a promise of trouble, and damn if he didn't crave every bit. The oasis was no mirage. It was a pulse, alive with crystal sands that crunched like glass underfoot, each grain catching light like shattered stars. Algae wove patterns in the water, glowing teal and violet, their currents curling like lovers' whispers. Ferns fringed the edges, their fronds silver, trembling with a sweetness that hit Arson's tongue. Fig and cinder, a taste that clung, wild and warm. Rocks rose in spirals, etched with runes that pulsed faintly, as if the scorch itself dreamed here. He dropped his pack, muttering, "If this ain't paradise, it's a damn good fake. Better than Rigel's bone dunes, that's for sure." Syra shed her cloak, revealing curves that stole his breath. Hips a tide, waist a vow, shoulders daring him to look. Her purple skin glowed fiercer, a nebula unbound, and her white hair spilled like a river, catching algae's light. She waded into the oasis, thigh deep, water embracing her like it knew her name. "Join me, funny man," she called, voice of velvet hum. "Or scared a little wet?" Her blue eyes twinkled, playful but heavy, her solitude. Last Kaisari, hunted for her spark, bleeding through her jest. Arson stripped his shirt, scars gleaming under starlight, the locket at his chest heavy with Kalia's ghost. Scared, he quipped, stepping in, water cool against his heat. Only of you stealing my spotlight, glow stick. His muscles flexed, taut from the rift's fight, and her laugh lightened the weight, a balm to wounds he'd carried too long. The water wove their shadows into one, her purple skin a canvas against his grit, and he felt it, her fire, pulling him like gravity. They stood close, the oasis pulsing around them, algae flaring brighter, as if it felt their spark. Her scent, fig and cinder sweet, untamed, wrapped him, a potion that stirred his blood. Droplets traced her purple skin, gliding down her throat, her hips, each bead a jewel he ached to claim. Her white hair clung to her shoulders, wet and wild, framing blue eyes that held a paradox, trust laced with hunger, pain softened by hope. "We're forbidden," she whispered, voice silk and steel, trembling like a star about to fall. Arson's hand found her waist, her heat a pulse against his palm, electric through the water. "Then we rewrite the rules," he murmured, voice rough, raw with need. The locket burned, Kalia's ghost fading under Syra's glow, and he leaned closer, their breaths a shared storm. Her fingers grazed his chest, not the locket but his skin, igniting a fire that drowned his guilt. "Show me," she said, blue eyes pleading, commanding, "what it means to be yours." He pulled her against him, their bodies a clash, his scars against her nebula, human grit meeting alien grace. The water surged, a chorus of whispers, as they moved together, a dance older than the scorch. Her purple skin blazed, white hair tangling in his grip, blue eyes locking his like anchors in a tempest. Their breaths wove a rhythm, rising, falling, a song without words, her sighs soft, his low growls acclaim. The algae pulsed, weaving light around them, as if sealing a pact no sun could break. They merged, not just flesh but flames, each touch a vow, each gasp a star igniting. Her cry was a spark, bright as a nebula's birth, answered by his, a surrender to now, not then. The water stilled, then rippled outward, carrying their union to the desert's heart, a secret the scorch would keep. They sank into each other, lost in a tide where time melted, where captor and captive became one fire, untouched yet eternal. Crystal sands cradled them, warm as their pulse, and for a moment, the universe was just them, her glow, his grit, their shared scars. Later, tangled in the oasis's embrace, Syra curled against his chest, purple skin warm, white hair a soft tide across his arm. Her blue eyes traced his face, fierce yet tender, a nebula at rest. "You marked me," she murmured, fingers brushing his scars. Not the locket, not with chains, but fire. Her voice held her pain. Kin gone, hunted still, but also hope, a spark she'd guarded alone until him. Arson chuckled, brushing her hair, the locket lighter now, Kalia's ghost quiet. "And you're my bad idea. Glow stick," he said, voice low. "Best one I've had." His humor hid the truth. Syra wasn't just fire. She was home, a place he hadn't known since Kalia's blood stained his hands. He kissed her brow, tasting fig and cinder, and added, "Don't quote me on that. My rep's shaky enough." Her laugh was music, raw and free. "Reputation?" She teased, blue eyes glinting. "I'm your forever punchline. Human." She stretched, purple skin catching starlight, and Arson's pulse jumped. She was a vision, his vision, worth every risk. Her hand lingered on his chest, warm, and she whispered, "You laugh to live, Arson. I see it now. Her shadow, your fight." Her nod to Kalia wasn't jealousy but truth, her own loss twining with his. He met her gaze, humor fading to something real. "Kalia's gone," he said, voice cracking. "You're here, Syra. That's enough." The words felt like shedding chains, his guilt loosening under her blue eyes, fierce with a trust he didn't deserve but craved. She smiled, a secret shared, and said, "Good." The stars don't forgive retreat. They rose, the oasis glowing softer now, algae dimming like it knew their fire was enough. Syra slipped into her cloak, purple skin peeking through, white hair swaying as she moved. Arson packed their gear, muttering, "Gotta keep moving, glow stick. Can't let paradise make us soft." She smirked, tossing him a water pouch. "Soft? Your heart's hard enough for both of us, funny man." Her tease was light, but her eyes held weight. Hunters still chased her spark, the veil's shadow looming. At dawn, Syra climbed a dune, her silhouette a beacon against the rising suns. Her purple skin blazed, white hair catching light like a crown, blue eyes fierce with hope, not fear. She turned, holding a crystal shard from the rift, smooth, warm, glowing faint as her skin. "Keep this," she said, pressing it into his palm, her touch a spark. "And keep me, where no desert can divide us." Her voice was a vow, her pain, last Kaisari, fugitive, woven with strength, a fire he'd fight for. Arson closed his hand over the shard, grinning to hide the lump in his throat. "Deal," he said, "but I'm charging you for the heartburn, glow stick." Her laugh rang out, a chime that drowned the scorch's whisper, and she stepped closer, her scent, fig and cinder, filling him again. "Heartburn," she purred, blue eyes dancing. "That's fire, human. Learn to love it." He did. Hell, he already did. The locket was just metal now, Kalia a memory, not a chain. Syra's purple skin glowed against his scars, her white hair brushing his arm, her blue eyes his anchor. They walked toward ruins in the distance, their spires aglow with ancient light, shadows entwined like their fates. The scorch hummed, no longer a vixen or a beast but a witness, singing of wars ended and desires begun. Arson muttered, "Triple pay's a scam, but you're the real deal, Syra." She smirked, her hand grazing his, and he knew. No desert, no veil, no ghost could pull them apart.